Meanwhile, in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo is trying to make the case yet again to close the Indian Point nuclear facility about an hour north of Manhattan. The plagued power plant has raised a series of red flags over failures. The latest, an inspection revealed hundreds of faulty or missing bolts meant to hold plates together inside the reactor. That means at this point, about a tenth of the bolts being used are too old in a power plant that critics say has aged beyond repair. The discovery will keep the reactor shut down for several additional weeks. And the problem was identified during an aging management inspection that is done at the plant once every decade. While aging nuclear plants, nothing new. Most of them are working past the expiration date. Joining me now is investigative journalist Karl Grossman, who has covered nuclear energy for decades. Karl, thank you for being with me. You said that these nuclear plants were created initially for a lifetime of 40 years. So where did that decision come about, and how have we really exceeded that lifetime?
Well, that was the conclusion of the engineers and scientists involved in the early development of nuclear power, that these plants couldn't last more than 40 years. The radioactivity would embrittle the metals and so forth. So that was a 40-year lifetime that the nuclear plants were licensed in the United States. Now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has been extending the licenses of 80 out of the 97 nuclear plants to 60 years. And it's talking about extending the licenses of the nuclear plants in America to 80 years. Imagine being on an interstate in an 80-year-old car. How safe would you feel?
It seems admirable that when they're creating these plans to say, look, we can do this for 40 years, to be doubling that expectation now. What are the side effects?
The side effects, the consequences, I think, ultimately will be, I hate to say this, catastrophic. I mean, not only is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission extending the lifetimes of these nukes to 60, and again, it's talking 80 years, but it's uprating the nukes. In other words, it's having them run harder and producing more electricity, but doing it in a much more volatile way. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, an arm of the U.S. government, is just asking for disaster. And we, the people of the United States, and people in other countries that would be affected by the fallout if we have a Chernobyl, if we have a Fukushima in the United States, they'll be the victims.
Well, look, but there is a regulatory agency, Karl, and companies that are running these plants like Indian Point say that they are following safety guidelines and that these guidelines are put in place so that they can continue the life of the plant. So if they are catching things like faulty bolts and replacing them, is that doing enough to actually keep it safe?
Absolutely not. I mean, well, a parallel to the nuclear industry would be the tobacco industry telling us that cigarettes was safe and denying the connection between smoking and cancer. As to government oversight, it really doesn't exist. In fact, the Atomic Energy Commission was eliminated by the U.S. government in 1974 because it was deemed to be a lapdog, not a watchdog. A Nuclear Regulatory Commission was put in its place, but it's the same kind of operation. NRC, no real concerns. NRC, Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission. That's what people have called the NRC. Neither the Atomic Energy Commission nor the Nuclear Regulatory Commission ever denied a construction or operating license for any nuclear plant anywhere, anytime in the U.S. And in terms of these aging, and they're really aging, nuclear plants in this country, again, no real concerns.
Karl, we only have a few seconds left, but I'm failing to see a solution here. If these plants were built with the idea that they would only last 40 years, we can't figure out how to even shut down these plants. That's how dangerous this waste is. What do we do?
We must shut them down immediately, so there'll be no more waste. Try to figure out how, in the best way, we can deal with these remnants of a crazy idea and push ahead with safe, clean, green, renewable technologies led by solar and wind, which are here today.
Investigative journalist and journalism professor at SUNY Westbury, Karl Grossman, thank you so much.
Thank you.